Great marketing has always been about reaching the right customer with the right message and offer at the right time. AI doesn't change that, it supercharges it, but only if you know the right tools. In this video, I'll show you 8 ways that AI is transforming marketing with a clear focus on results, not hype. Hi, I'm Joshua Ebner. I'm a 20-year expert in AI, machine learning, and data science. By the end of this video, you'll know critical AI techniques that you can use for marketing that most business leaders miss. Tools that go far beyond ChatGPT, which, when used correctly, can transform how you attract, retain, and grow customers. Okay, the first major AI technique that I want to talk about is customer segmentation. Now, hear me out. I know that when most people think about AI, they're thinking about ChatGPT or AI agents, but segmentation is a classic form of machine learning, and machine learning is a type of AI. Moreover, almost every great technology business over the last 10 to 20 years has been a big user of segmentation. It's one of the reasons that they've been able to win. So I want to challenge you to think about how you might be able to use this in your business. Okay, so customer segmentation, what we're doing, we're taking a very large group of customers and then we're identifying subgroups. Typically, to do this, we're using a technique like k-means clustering or a related set of clustering techniques. But in terms of why it matters, and specifically why it matters for marketing, is by identifying subgroups, you can figure out what those different groups like, what they want, what they need, what they desire. From a marketing perspective, you can figure out what sorts of messages resonate with those different groups. You can figure out what type of offers resonate with those groups. This actually ties in as well to product strategy. If you figure out the offer that they want, you might need to rework your product or your service in certain ways for those different groups. Once you have your product or service dialed in, then you can construct offers around your product or service that are going to resonate with those different segments. It's also worth noting that segmentation can help you identify the highest value versus lower value segments. In many cases, businesses, for maybe obvious reasons, want to focus on the higher revenue or higher profitability segments. This can be absolutely critical if you want to grow your business. So the key takeaway here is smarter customer segmentation leads to higher revenue, higher profitability, and ultimately higher ROI on your marketing campaigns. Okay, next, let's talk about using AI for content creation and marketing creative. So here I'm talking about using a large language model primarily for generating things like website copy, sales page copy, newsletters, and product descriptions. You can also use video models to generate video or images that, again, you can put on your website, your sales pages, inside of your newsletters, etc. You can also use some of these tools for your content marketing. If you are, let's say, doing SEO, you're writing blog posts, you can use a large language model to help you with that. You can also, for things like video, you can use a large language model to script out a video. Now, one thing that I want to warn about here is that large language models sometimes get this stuff wrong. So ideally, what you want to do is you're not going to just use a off-the-shelf LLM like ChatGPT all by itself. In many cases, you want to do some context engineering around that, and you want to be able to give it access to some of your documents, some of your marketing documents, and brand identity documents. You often want it to understand the brand voice, the product positioning, and in order to do that, you often need to give it access to documents through something like a RAG system, Retrieval Augmented Generation, RAG. It's also worth noting that in many cases, this is really just an enhancer. It's not a replacement. So if you try and use a large language model to, let's say, make a video script or write a blog post, it sometimes gets things wrong. It makes errors. It might include things in your copy that you don't want in there. It might exclude certain things that you do want in the copy. So in many cases, you're going to need a marketing expert that understands your marketing, that understands your product, and understands your customers to really oversee the content generation process to, number one, write good prompts, to engineer good context, and then to evaluate the output copy to make sure that it is appropriate and it's likely to work well for your marketing objectives. But if you do this correctly, you will be able to speed up a lot of your content creation and creation of marketing copy, which ultimately leads to just better productivity and higher profitability on your marketing initiatives. Next, number 3, you can use predictive AI to predict customer lifetime value. Now, why would you do this? If you can predict how valuable a customer is likely to be over their relationship with the business, you can focus on your higher revenue or higher profitability customers, and this can in turn increase your revenue and your profit. So how do you do this? Typically, we're going to use predictive AI techniques, specifically a set of techniques called regression models, linear regression, decision trees, gradient boosted trees. Don't worry too much about the techniques, but I do want you to be familiar with them. Ultimately, though, if you do this right, you can spend more money acquiring high-value customers and deepening relationships with potentially high-value customers while avoiding wasting your marketing dollars on lower-value ones. Next, sentiment analysis and text analytics for customer research. Almost everything in marketing is downstream of understanding the customer, understanding what customers like, what they want, understanding their hopes, dreams, and fears. In many cases, things like ads and sales page copy start with customer research. Same thing with most other marketing campaigns. So understanding the customer is really important. To understand the customer, you can often analyze things like sales call transcripts, customer reviews, surveys, support tickets, social media. Anytime the business is interacting with the customer or the customer is commenting on the business in some way, there's usually some rich data that can be mined to help you understand the customer better. But the question is, how exactly do you do this? Previously, in the past, we would use data science techniques and analytics techniques to do some of this, as well as more manual customer research, interviewing customers, then going through those transcripts kind of by hand, reading through them, annotating the transcripts and things like that. You can actually automate a lot more of this. Like I said, with data analysis, you can actually analyze survey data quite well with certain types of data analytics, but now you can also use certain types of AI that are sort of related to large language models, but they're a little bit different. So we can often now use masked language models like the BERT family of models. You don't need to understand that. I just want you to be familiar with the terms. You can use some of these types of models to do things like sentiment analysis and text analytics. Now, you can use LLMs for this. They're often not as accurate, and they typically don't work as well at scale. So if you're going to do this in a serious way, you should be using probably a masked language model, a BERT-based model. You also can, as I said, use more traditional data analytics if the data is structured in particular ways. Now, if you get this right, this can surface unmet needs, frustrations with your product or your business, pain points, and it can help you do this at scale. And this leads to insights that can shape your marketing strategy as well as your product strategy. Okay, next, number 5, predictive AI. In marketing, we often use predictive systems to predict things like churn, propensity to buy, and propensity to upgrade. So in terms of techniques, just so you're aware, we often use classification systems. This is a type of predictive system that is essentially just predicting a binary outcome. Is the person going to churn or not churn, or buy versus not buy? So we can use a variety of different classification algorithms, things like decision trees. You can use neural networks for this, logistic regression. Now, I don't want you to get too caught up in the exact techniques, but I just want you to be familiar. In terms of why it matters, though, and why it's important for marketing, if you can predict who's likely to churn out of your business, i.e., stop being a customer, you can proactively go and talk to those individuals or set up processes and systems for reaching out to the people that are likely to churn to help try and retain those customers. So it helps you build customer retention strategies. If you can figure out who's likely to buy, you can better focus your marketing efforts on the people that are very likely to buy versus the people that really aren't. Same thing goes with upsell propensity. If you want to increase your revenue, one great way of doing that from a marketing perspective is trying to enhance or deepen the relationship with the customer. So if you have multiple different tiers of your product or service, if they're at the basic level paying $49 a month, but you can identify the people that are very likely to be ready to upgrade to the premium level or elite level at a much higher dollar amount, you can actually increase the revenue per customer. So ultimately, these types of AI systems are critical for customer acquisition, customer retention, and revenue generation. Next, we have lead scoring. This is actually somewhat similar to some of the predictive systems that I talked about just a moment ago. With lead scoring, we are using predictive systems to predict how likely a prospect or customer is to convert for a particular marketing campaign. We very often use these for prospect campaigns. If we have a prospect list, maybe that you buy from an external data vendor, you can score those leads to figure out the ones that are most likely to convert on an offer. This helps you focus your marketing spend, particularly if reaching out to those customers is expensive in some way, or the type of offer you are giving them. Maybe you're providing an incentive for them to become a customer, and that incentive might have a cost associated with it. You obviously don't want to spend money on people that either won't convert or are going to be kind of low revenue generating customers. So you often want to score your leads for certain types of marketing campaigns. We can do this with, again, predictive systems, often using things like logistic regression or certain types of decision trees. Very frequently, boosted trees work well for this. But if you do this correctly, you can improve your conversion rates and ultimately increase your marketing efficiency. Okay, next, number 7. This one is maybe a little bit more niche or a little bit more advanced, but if you use it correctly, this can dramatically increase the revenue per customer and ultimately deepen the relationship with the customer. Here, I'm talking about recommendation systems. Now, many of the best companies in the world have been built on recommendation systems. The really big one here is Amazon. Every time you go to Amazon, you're going to see recommended products. So it might say things like, based on your recent purchases, you might like, or similar customers like XYZ, and it'll have a string of potential products that it's recommending to you. Amazon is essentially trying to find the best products that you are most likely to buy. That increases the number of repeat purchases, and it also increases average cart value. Repeat purchase behavior and higher cart values ultimately lead to greater revenue, greater growth, and higher business valuations. So this technique can be very powerful. It's not just limited to Amazon, by the way. YouTube and Netflix both have been built on this. Now, that might not increase the revenue directly, but giving customers recommendations for things like videos or content that they're very likely to enjoy keeps them on the platform more. It increases the interaction on the platform, and it causes them to remain customers and refrain from churning out. So in terms of techniques, I will say this is quite a bit harder than some of the other ones that I talked about. Recommendation systems are notoriously difficult to build. You can use certain types of neural networks for this. We often use techniques called embedding systems. I'm not going to get too deep into the weeds on the exact techniques, but ultimately, if you do this right, you can increase customer satisfaction, increase repeat purchases, increase average purchase value, and ultimately drive revenue. Okay, and finally, number 8, you might have been wondering how we can use large language models and agents for marketing. So setting aside a couple of the things like using LLMs for content generation, I think one of the best ways to use large language models and agents is as an execution layer. So here's what I mean. All of the other techniques that I talked about here, you can use LLMs and agents to help you execute those things. So let's say you're building a predictive model. You're going to need to get the data, clean it, train the model, validate that the model works on what we would call a test data set, then deploy the model, then set up all of the monitoring systems, and so on. There's a variety of different tasks and steps along the way that need to be executed. Traditionally, this takes people with a lot of knowledge and a somewhat rare skill set. I think going forward, we're going to see a lot more companies use large language models, agents, coding co-pilots to figure out how to do this and figure out how to do it well. Now, I will add a little bit of caution here. Most of these techniques are still fairly difficult to do, and there's a lot of ways that they can go sideways. So if you get this wrong, you might actually cause big problems in your business. My recommendation to you is that you use large language models and agents sort of like enhancers to people that already know what they're doing. If you don't have talented people in your business that can build predictive systems, build segmentation systems, build recommenders, and all of the other techniques that I talked about, you might either want to hire some people that can do that. You might want to hire some external consultants that can do it. You might want to get some training for your internal technology people or some of your technologically sophisticated marketing staff. You might want to do those things, but then you will want to enhance their abilities using large language models, coding co-pilots, and AI agents. AI in marketing isn't just about shiny tools. It's about strategy, personalization, and prediction. From segmentation to retention, from creative to customer lifetime value, these tools turn your marketing into a measurable growth engine. If you want to scale your business with AI, start with the 8 techniques that we talked about here in this video. What do you think? Are you interested in using AI for your marketing? Have you used some of these techniques, maybe gotten stuck, or maybe have some challenges? I want to hear from you. Leave a comment below. And if you want to learn more about how to use AI to grow revenue, increase profit, and build an AI-centric company, make sure to subscribe.